I'm really surprised that Gen Y isn't protesting in the streets about this.
This episode, we're looking at housing affordability and how the taxpayer can help pick up the tab if your attic smells like possum urine. Hi, I'm Francis Keeney, and welcome to Follow the Money, brought to you by the Australia Institute.
One for Mum, one for Dad, one for the country.
Dead, buried, cremated.
Australia's basically done for. We'll just end up being a third-rate economy. You know, a banana republic.
Just follow the money.
Most of us have been there, living in a dodgy, run-down share house that's pretty close to town. You can afford to pay the rent, but to actually buy the place is a different matter altogether.
I lived in a place a few years ago when, with the first time that it rained, I realised that we had a water feature in our living room. That was not by design. It was raining and we basically had a waterfall. We also had possums living in the roof, so the water smelt worse than it otherwise might have done.
That's Cameron Amos, researcher at the Australia Institute.
Hi, I'm Matt Grudnoff. I'm the senior economist at the Australia Institute. I have never ever lived in a share house. I have managed to avoid that completely.
Well, lucky you don't have any experiences like, John Birmingham, who died with a falafel in his hand. No one's died on a beanbag in your living room or anything like that.
Not at all. I have managed to avoid it completely. I don't think I'd enjoy living in a share house. I do like my own space.
Now, especially if you're living in Sydney at the moment, housing affordability is a pretty big issue. The median house price in that city has already topped $1 million, according to the Domain Group. And there's a lot of people who are pretty upset about it.
I'm really surprised that Gen Y isn't protesting in the streets about this. I mean, as I said, there's this strong desire within the Australian psyche to own your own home, and the people who can't own their own home at the moment and are unlikely to anytime soon are Generation Y. They're the ones that are being shafted mainly by baby boomers and my generation, Generation X to a certain extent. We're the ones basically outbidding these or bidding up the prices of these houses so that these younger people cannot afford homes.
I'm Gen Y, Matt is Gen X, and I personally do have the pitchforks out. Fundamentally, owning a house is a rational thing to do. There are all sorts of benefits associated with it.
But this isn't a simple issue, and there's a number of potential causes as well. And two of the issues are things that you might have seen in the headlines recently.
The one that everybody's heard about is negative gearing, and that basically means that if you make a loss renting out your house, so if the rental income you get, if you're a landlord, the rental income you get is less than all your expenses, including your interest payments on the loan to buy the house, then the taxpayer basically pays some of that loss to the extent of your marginal tax rate. So effectively, the taxpayer is forking out covering some of your loss.
The other is called the capital gains tax discount,
which sounds like the most boring thing in the world, and most people immediately switch off. And as Jon Stewart once famously said, if you want to do something evil, wrap it in something boring.
Okay, so basically you have to pay capital gains tax on the profit that you make when you sell something like shares or a house for more than what you bought it for. The Howard government offered a discount on that tax when it was in office, as long as you've held that asset for more than a year.
It came in 1999. It was brought in by Peter Costello, the then Treasurer, and it basically means that you pay half as much tax on your capital gain than you do on anything else. So if you get a capital gain, you'll only pay tax on half of it. And that simply means that when you sell the property, you get so much more of the capital gain back and you pay so much less tax.
There's a lot of people involved in all this. In fact, there's 1.3 million Australians who are in property investment at the moment. That's a big uptake in the past decade or so. And there's a pretty good reason for it too.
Negative gearing, at its essence, is a completely sound and justifiable policy to have. The idea that we can deduct our expenses that we incur as we earn our income is one that we have in all sorts of areas. The unique thing about Australia is that we allow income from all sorts, from all areas to be deducted, rather than if I make a loss in property or in capital or in investments and those sorts of things, I can then deduct against my income from investments. I can deduct it from my personal income. That's quite strange.
Negative gearing's been around for ages and ages and ages. So it's not actually negative gearing that's driving this. It's the combination of negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount that's driving this.
If we got rid of it, would it actually help?
It would certainly help. What we have at the moment is two groups of people showing up to an auction. Those who want to buy their own home and live in it, and those who want an investment property. And one group of those people get very generous tax incentives from the government, and the others don't. And so effectively, the playing field isn't level. And these people who are able to afford or get these tax concessions are able to bid the price higher, and they're getting the properties.
But have we got other issues? Got things like the first home buyers grant, stamp duty being reduced for those who are trying to get into the market. We've got things at the moment to try and help people. Gen Y's try and get into the market. Isn't that supposed to help?
It is supposed to help, and it certainly will moderate to some extent. But if you put $10,000 in somebody's pocket, for example, and say, "Hey, go buy this on a house," the house price will go up because you have more money to bid on it with. The result needs to be on both the supply and demand side. The solution is on the supply and the demand side. It can't just be, here's some cash payments.
So yes, this is a pretty complex issue. And because a lot of people take advantage of this, winding back these rules is going to be difficult but necessary, according to the Australia Institute.
There's some very easy gains to be made by cutting back on the generosity of negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount. Effectively, this means that you reduce the demand for housing, so you have an immediately effect on the housing market, but also the government is paying out less. So the government actually helps the government's budget position, which the government's very concerned about at the moment. So it's kind of a win-win situation where you have an immediate effect on housing affordability, and you have a positive effect on the budget.
One option is to restrict negative gearing for new properties only, and to grandfather existing arrangements.
If we were to restrict it that way, and we were to get rid of the capital gains tax discount, that is, we were to tax capital gains like we tax everything else and not treat it as special, then the government would raise about $7 billion a year. So we would see $7 billion extra dollars come to the government.
And we've got alarm bells ringing all over the place, including the Reserve Bank. It's also worried about this. It claims that these two tax incentives have made the housing bubble worse and is also increasing the risk on investors. The United Kingdom, for instance, is planning to wind back similar measures. And we've also got the Labor Party and the Greens back home that are promising to look at the issue. We've got a few people wanting to maintain the status quo here. We've got organisations like the Property Council of Australia and the HIA that say that any big changes are going to affect mum and dad investors, and that rental prices could also increase. Now, research by the Australia Institute does cast doubt on that. It shows over a third of the benefits from negative gearing went to the top 10% of households. And that top income tax bracket also gets 3/4 of the capital gains tax discounts. And that rental prices are unlikely to be affected.
I put a lot of doubt in the idea that, these things are, housing prices in Sydney in particular are always going to go up. It's always going to go up because the nature of the market is that just doesn't happen. Now, if we care about housing prices being stable and going up, at a smooth trend over time, which is a good thing, then we should be trying to take volatility out of the market, not artificially introduce it in.
And look, we don't have to have the kind of collapse that we saw in the global financial crisis in housing prices in the US for there to be a problem in Australia. It doesn't actually have to be that bad before some people get seriously burnt and a lot of people end up being seriously financially hurt from a bursting of the property bubble.
So we change capital gains tax, we change negative gearing. I'll be able to afford that possum-riddled apartment in Newtown sometime soon.
Yeah, you probably will be. I'm not sure if you'd want to, but it might be more affordable all the same. Just at least get the possums out first, I reckon. That'll probably help.
I can't claim that on capital gains? Possum piece?
You could. I suppose you could try, but maybe the exterminator costs.
Actually, if you own the property and you get rid of the possum, you can actually charge that as an expense, and if it adds to your loss, then yes, the taxpayer will pick up part of that.
And that's Follow the Money. You can follow me on Twitter at RedDeckNinja. Matt Grudnoff is at Matt Grudnoff. Cameron Amos is at CamAmos_. And the Australia Institute's Twitter handle is at the Oz Institute. For more information about this episode, you can also visit the website at tai.org.au. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.